Thanks. Can you guys hear me? Can everybody hear me? Welcome to Books and Bars. My name is Jeff. Thanks for being here tonight. Tonight we are talking about Anthony Doerr's book, Cloud Cuckoo Land. And I'm especially interested in what you guys thought of it. So hopefully you've read the book and you've come here and you want to discuss a little bit. All questions welcome, all comments. Feel free to use our chat. Feel free to raise your hand. I'll call on you and ask you to unmute yourself and then speak to us. Anyone here for the first time, never have done Books and Bars before? Don't be afraid to raise your hand. I put some instructions in the chat. If you have any questions, we probably have some experts here who can help you also. But I'm really interested, like I said, in what you guys thought of it. So a couple questions I had early on were, what's your most memorable part of this book for you and why? And of course, we can always start with a little bit about the author. I put it in the chat, but I'll read it for you here. He's the author of All the Light We Cannot See, which was the winner of the Pulitzer Prize, the Carnegie Medal, the Alex Award, and a #1 New York Times bestseller. He's also the author of story collections Memory Wall and The Shell Collector, the novel about Grace, and the memoir 4 Seasons in Rome. He's won 5 O. Henry Prizes, the Rome Prize, the New York Public Library's Young Lions Award, many others. Interesting thing I find is that he's born and raised in Cleveland, and he lives in Boise, Idaho with his wife and 2 sons. I brought him up most recently on a list that I've been seeing of maybe most currently important or exciting or interesting American authors. Also on that list was last month's author, Amor Towles. And I found it really interesting with this book following Amor Towles' book, following Madeline Miller's book, and all of the connections to Greek tragedies that we had over the last few months, and how Madeline Miller's book kind of set us up, I think, to better be prepared for the next 2. So feel free, if you've read either of those, to compare and contrast and tell me what you thought of this one following those. Would anyone like to kick it off tonight? Tell us what they thought of the book or something memorable about it for them, something they really liked, or, you can always say what you give it 1 out of 5 stars to warm up. Feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, I see Dr. Todd. Always know I can count on the good doctor for early comment. Doctor, talk to us.
Indeed. I have to honestly say out of the gate, this was like, what the hell did Jeff pick out? Because it's like my mind is going all over the place, and it was really messing with me up front, and it was only with the fortitude of experience with you that I stayed with it and said, okay, walk it through all the way through. I found the front end difficult. I found questionable the benefit of the gal who, well, I guess she had to be there to collect the old things from the building that she climbed up on. But that was really weak for me. That could have played stronger if she had that much of a significant role in contributing to the long fortitude of this, that it could have done better. I loved the unfortunately dysfunctional kid. It's like, I get that. You're like so many of my patients. I get you. It made perfect sense, including being dissuaded into a false, what we I think are led to believe is a false reality of this camp with major fighters and Xena, his female warrior friend that was going to be his companion. But I did like how it all came kind of close together in the end. I liked the ad of the owls. And I sort of got that one when I first saw them or first read it, but it's like, okay, now I understand why. I thought it was fascinating that the ship that was contained tighter than a water seal tank evidently had one germ that killed all but one of the kids. That I had trouble with because it wasn't reconciled. He didn't come back and say, "Oh, this is how it happened. Look, there's this leak," or it would have made sense that what's her name, the automated voice thing would have told them that here's what's wrong. But neither of those things happened, and it was never really answered. I did find it fascinating that it was a place that had never left, and this was very Chaucerian of a story within a story within a story within a story, and how the stories ultimately intersected and came together. That said, I only gave it like 3 stars because I still think it had a kooky beginning. And I would have loved also to have heard more about the fella. I'm having trouble with memory recall of his name. The veteran who had a lustful relationship with his fellow person. I didn't think that got like introduced, but it's like, well, why did you introduce it? Where are you going to go with that? What was your purpose? Because there didn't seem to be a purposeful follow through on that one. And I would have liked to have heard more about his ending, because we heard so much about his beginning, his influence, and yet it was like, yeah, and we're done with him. That's it. So a 3-star.
Well, Dr. Todd, thank you. And thank you for giving me the benefit of the doubt and sticking with it. And at least it still got 3 stars from you. I hope you don't regret reading it, and I hope after our discussion.
I have never regretted reading any one of the books, and never at all.
I'm happy to hear that, and I'm happy to have you here again tonight in our discussion, making it richer. So stick with us, and let's see what everyone else thought. I see Will has got his hand up. Will, talk to us.
I definitely have to echo some of what Dr. Todd was saying. I would say the 40 to 50% point in this book, I was really kind of pulling out my hair and just, I actually went back and like looked at some reviews and stuff, because I did not know kind of what was going on or where this book was going. And 2022, a big goal of mine is getting more comfortable with like do not finishing a book, kind of just moving on. But there was just so much energy around this book that I kind of pushed through, and I'm really glad I did, because the way all of the narratives get tied together, what this book ultimately is about, which I would say, like 70% of in is when you actually start like getting the major themes and the story he's trying to tell. And I guess I disagree with Todd a little bit. I think all of the first half is totally redeemed. And, I found the Constantinople timeline really interesting. And I just couldn't believe how 2022 and of this moment this book felt. Like we have a larger nation sieging a city and attacking their sovereignty in the Constantinople line. We have a pandemic that like wipes out this ship. There's climate change throughout this. And then you have like a kid who gets kind of, drafted to eco-terrorism from like a shadowy dark red group that may or may not actually exist. So I couldn't believe just how of this moment this book was, even though it came out a little bit before the moment we're living in now. And I guess the last thing I want to say off the gate is just, I 80% of the way in the book, I thought this was going to be a really dark ending. Like, I thought this was a story of like about the end of the world, and like, yes, life goes on as we can see through all these other timelines, but like, does it matter if like individuals, if individuals in their timeline, the world ends, does it matter if like life itself goes on? Because their, you know, their world is over. And, you know, I felt like the book was right up there until the end, and the way he kind of pulls the needle through and lands the plane in what I thought was such a hopeful and beautiful ending was just, you know, just masterful. So this is definitely like top 3 books and bar books so far. So I just love this book.
Wow. Well, I'm so happy that it really connected for you like that. Can you tell us maybe a couple of the other ones that you would rank so highly?
Dune is definitely up there. The stars and the blackness between them is definitely up there. I guess those are the ones that come to my mind like immediately. I'd have to look back at the list to think a little bit more about the others.
Awesome. It's exciting to me that Dune can be referenced as a Books and Bars book. That was the first time that, you know, a lot of us read it for this. And I love that. It's like, oh yeah, that's a Books and Bars book. It's like we got some kind of stamp of approval into a classic there. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your comments too, Will. I see Helen has her hand up for a while. Helen, please talk to us.
Hey,
Hi.
so I definitely would echo the slow start to the book, but I think it's funny because what was the frustration at first of trying to make the connections became my favorite thing as the book progressed, because then as you were making the connections from one character to the next, you know, from one century to the next, it was really fun to do that. So I'd say that's probably what I enjoyed the most. I would love to know, and I, kind of hearing from Todd and Will kind of brought this up too, like what was the theme and the purpose like? And I guess the answer is there was more than one. And for me, I was really drawn to the climate change, theme and Seymour, and that like it was so devastating to figure out the way that he went forward with trying to be a hero of climate change, and so and then following the path of like preserving history or preserving this like story and the literature through time. And I found myself a little bit confused of like, what is the goal? What are we trying to achieve through, or what is Doerr trying to hit home for all of us? And maybe he couldn't figure it out, so he just gave us all of it. And it was so complex. But I was a little bit lost in that. And then I would say another frustration is just the loss of the crew, like Constance's family, or I assume lost. Like we obviously, she never makes mention in the epilogue of her mom and dad and anyone else on the ship. For me, that I was like really grieving that. I almost felt like there wasn't closure. Like she was living, and they're in this future world where there hasn't been a sunset for months, or and so obviously there is a planet. It's not one that we would recognize, but who is there with her? I found myself really frustrated that we didn't know the answer to that. But I would I kind of rate out of 5, like in low 4. I feel like there were a lot more pages than maybe what we needed. But I remember his other books being really long as well. So that might be what he's going for, his thing.
Yeah, the only other one that I've read is The Light, the really famous one. But yeah, it definitely takes a while. And I've put a few things in the chat about including what Doerr has said, kind of what he feels it's about. And really the thing I got was this, how stories outlive us all. And really this is like the stories that were told thousands and thousands of years ago are still being told, which is something that, again, we heard in the last two books too. And I really found those connections to be interesting. And I didn't completely intentionally put these three together, although I did kind of maybe want to see Amor Towles versus Anthony Doerr and see how those two would come out, knowing how much everyone liked their previous books, and to see, they're both had such a sensation. And I do think that the hype around this one may have detracted from some of the actual enjoyment once people got into it. But I'm interested if anyone else feels differently. Rebecca's had her hand up for a while. So Rebecca, talk to us.
First off, Helen, I think that the sun didn't go down because they were very far north. I think that was where it was, rather than anything really wrong with the planet. That was my read on that. So it I could be wrong on that, but
that's how I read it also. But
okay, good.
I don't
that
know
makes sense. That makes sense.
But that was I was like, oh, okay. So they're in, like where there's certain
Greenland
parts of
or
the time
whatever
of the
it
year,
was.
where you have like eternal sunshine sort of thing.
Yeah. A couple of thoughts. All the light we cannot see. What he does, and he does again in this, is he writes, you'd say the mind of children. He writes children, basically. It's a child's take on a world, trying to understand, trying to make sense of things from their perspective. Obviously, these are extraordinary children, and very calm, and have large attention span and all that kind of stuff. So, but because I was already used to that format, this one did not bother me at all. Second, I happened to be reading concurrently with this the Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, and she also wrote The Night Circus, which we did on Books and Bars. Mm-hmm. And that is also a long book with lots of different narrators or different sections. And so I, rather than getting frustrated with the format, I kind of embraced it, and I listened to them in chunks. I didn't try to do a big session of reading it all and keeping it straight. Because I was reading two books like this, and so I just had to settle down and enjoy, just go along for the ride and not try to, I don't know, overthink it, I guess. And so it made it enjoyable for me. Whenever you're reading those kinds of books, it always takes, it's almost like world building in sci-fi. You have to just be patient and let them tell the story. And not everyone likes those kinds of books. I think I have a lot of patience with those kinds of books as a result. The five characters, the five kids, really, I did love. It was like a puzzle piece, how, we were being described all these different lives and all these, and then how they inevitably came together. So, it wasn't as if we couldn't see the plot taking shape, but I still enjoyed it quite a lot to see, oh, this is how they're going to connect, and this is how they are going to connect. And I did not get the sense that the author was going to hurt us, like, except for Tree and Moonlight. Oh, that part was hard. Those two oxen, I really got invested in them. And what's his name?
Trusty friend.
Omer. He was obviously the sweetest character as well. So anyway, that whole thing, I could just have a whole, story just on him and the way he treats animals like his grandfather does, etc. Anyway, so when you get something like that is so beautiful in a book, I will forgive a lot of other things. My main feeling about the point of it all, if there is such a thing, is that people have to go through a lot of shit at times, a lot of shit. And that's kind of what the whole story of the Cloud Cuckoo Land is. You're going to have this journey that's full of really terrible things happen, but in the end, you might find a little bit of paradise. And I think all of them did end up with a little bit of paradise. And I'm hoping that that is good things for us, because I think Constance may have ended up with people and not on this journey where she's going to die in space. And I don't know what happened, where the germs came from, or where the, you know, I think it was all an evil corporation's attempt to data mine how people work in long-term space things so they can build better ships. I don't know. The Ilium Corporation was obviously doing a lot of very unethical things with everybody. So hopefully life will begin in a more, I don't know, what's humane space. And maybe it's not the end of the world, and maybe climate change isn't that the very last word on our earth. Anyway, I've talked enough.
You never talk enough, Rebecca. We always appreciate you. Thank you. Some great comments, and you did hit some of the emotional touchstones for me also in this story. So if you guys don't know, Rebecca always does a wonderful sketch note of our discussions online here, which she shares with us, and it's a really great recap. So if we're lucky, we'll get to see it at the end. Otherwise, we both share it online on our social media. So look for that from Rebecca and from Books and Bars after this discussion. Thanks again. Donna is here with her hand up. Donna, pull out those notes. What do they say?
Oh, well, hi, everyone. This book is so complex that it's really hard to distill what even to say about it. I mean, maybe something about the writing and something about the themes, but I went into this book with a little bit of dread, I think, because I knew a bit about it because I listened to the interview he did with Talking Volumes, and I was amazed at all the thought that he put into this book and how he talked about, I think he puts all his little notes on index cards, and then he figures out how he's going to tie things together and so on. And I think that is extremely ambitious for a writer to do, and to tackle how many different time periods and characters, and somehow capture in each story along the way all those sensory details, sense of place, all of that. I mean, I really felt like we were right in that little library with those children rehearsing their little play. And then we're right with Seymour and his frustrations and needing to wear his sound canceling earphones and so on. We're right there in the with the oxen, and like Rebecca was saying, with the sad story about the trudging through, you know, to try to build that cannon and drag it there to Constantinople and so on. And we're right there in that little cell with Anna, and she's watching her sister Maria die slowly, and you know, it's just very touching. And then we're on that spaceship with that crazy stuff going on, and on those like treadmill things, whatever they were, in those visor things they wore to kind of see into what Sybil was transferring into their brains from this, you know, great brain and all this. And he did each one of those with a very, I felt, a very strong gift of storytelling, which then, as Jeff, I think you commented in the notes, that I think his fascination with just the whole idea of storytelling and how important it is for us in our lives to hear stories and to hear engaging stories. And there were several parts in the book where there were characters reading to other characters as a way to kind of deflect from the misery of the present or so on. And I can't remember the quote now, but there's something about, as long as somebody's telling you a story, your life can go on. I mean, you're going to get through this, and it'll kind of help you adjust and deal.
When
And-
Anna was reading to Maria, that's
Yes, and then there was other parts too, where even when what's his name with Rex, the two guys in the Korean War, they ended up sharing kind of stories. And there were just and I think even in the beginning with Zeno and the children and having them put this play together was sort of a story, unfolding storytelling. And then he wove the story of Diogenes and the Cuckoo Land, we got little snippets all through the book at the beginning of each section. So I felt like in this crazy time, even though this was a really long book and kind of intimidating to pick up, like it's a doorstop, I thought he was doing this as well. He kept unfolding this story over this time. And I just kind of went with it. I thought, okay, I'll let Anthony Doerr tell me this story and it'll take me away from whatever else is going on. And it'll just be a really nice kind of diversion. So that said, I think, yeah, the storytelling piece was important. I think the preservation of knowledge, even if it's not about something super important, maybe it's a story about Cloud Cuckoo Land, but there was that whole thread about libraries and the preservation of knowledge and the librarians that kind of help people have that access. And as a librarian, I thought that was a great thread through the whole thing. So yeah, I think you did a good job. And the short chapters helped. I thought, oh my gosh, come on, editors, even with a great author, an editor can get an author to trim it back a little bit, just so that they don't discourage too many readers if they have a great book, because a lot of people aren't going to read a tome like this. But here I was, page, all the white space between the chapters and the changing voices. And it wasn't any longer of a read than some other books we've read. I mean, it turned out to be pretty manageable. And I loved the description of this blue book, and we had it all tied together where we finally found out, okay, she's looking for, Constance is looking for that book she saw on her father's nightstand. It had a blue cover and it had clouds and it had the towers at the top and the birds flying. And she persisted, and then to find out that particular edition translated by our other character, and then it turns out it was his granddaughter or somebody who was in that little play, and she goes back to that day, and there's the book with the blue cover. And then, oh my gosh, I mean, it was mind-blowing. And then to find out the little owls along the way that Seymour had put in, and wow, I mean, what a tour de force. Okay, I've talked enough too, but that's
Well, thanks, Donna. Well, it was dedicated to you. As I put in the chat, he dedicated to the librarians then, now, and in the years to come. And if you want to read why, you can see in the chat where he talks about that. So it's dedicated to just someone like you, and it obviously connected, and I appreciate that. Thanks for sharing that. Who hasn't had a chance yet that wants to say something? Sue has her hand up. Hi, Sue.
Hello. I don't know what else to add. You've all pretty much covered everything, but I'm not a big rereader, but I think with this one, I might reread it in a few years because I think it was so layered and there's so many Easter eggs left along the way that I probably missed the first time through, that I think I might just hold on to this one and pick it up in a couple more years. I liked it. I don't think I'd give it a 5, but probably a 4. And yeah, I liked the back and forth. It does take some getting used to in the beginning, but the storytelling is so rich and he's so good at the characters and the storytelling that I didn't mind it. And I agree, I like the short chapters interspersed that seem to help kind of with the flow. And so I don't know, that's my take.
Thanks, Sue. Sue, I'm not a rereader either, but I do feel that certain books would probably reward a reread. And this does seem like one that would. And I am sure that I missed a bunch of the Easter eggs and connections that are here. Happy to get the ones that I did. And when I did, it was really exciting, referencing some of the things that Donna said too. But yeah, I'm wondering, to his style and to all the different stories here, were there ones that you were more interested in and wanted to stay with, and then when you went back to another one, maybe you were like, oh, I was happy with this one, I didn't want to hear more about this? Like, I guess, did you have sections that you liked more than others, and or do you think that he wrote other parts better? I see Rachel has her hand up. Rachel G.
Yeah, though I'm gonna say this right, Omer and Anna, like, it was just so much misery. It's just like, I know this is history and I know this is real, but I cannot read about them getting even more tortured anymore. I couldn't take it. And anytime they kill an animal or a pet, like, I am like, oh, it's like killing a dog in a movie. Don't do that.
Yeah.
So it's really rough. It was just like torture porn, I feel like, for those two. And like, I get it. The poor were just like, their life sucked back then. I get it. I don't know if I want to read about it for 800 pages or whatever it was for that. But I mean, the last 200 pages, when Constance got, and I think, like you were saying, I think Constance was my favorite character to read about. And I don't think it's just because I like geeky things and sci-fi and things like that. It wasn't just because she was in space, but I just found her story interesting and compelling. And then Zeno too was good as well. But the minute there was like a, wait, WTF, what's going on here? Something's not quite right. That's when I was like, all right, I'm all in on this book now. And like, before that, I was just like, okay, I'm going to read this for Jeff. I'm going to get through this book club. It's going to be fine. If it wasn't for book club, I might have, I am also like, I've started letting go. I'm like, I can put this book down. There are a couple books now. One of them was a book club book, Hotel New Hampshire. Dr. Todd, there's one book that I would not recommend from book club. I think, I'm sorry, I think that was your author suggestion, but oh man, I've read other things and that's better, but I could not with that one. But sorry, I'm diverging. But yeah, the minute Constance had like an inkling of like, wait, something's not quite right here, like I was like, it was like the first chapter I was reading that night or something, and then I just read the rest of the book all in one sitting that night, and it felt like it felt like it was kind of like, it was so quick, and it felt like this like hurried like epilogue at the end of a movie or something, where it's just like flashes of how everybody ends up happily ever after kind of thing. But I'm like, that was 200 pages. I think it's just because the rest of the book was so long that I was like, oh, this is so quick. This ending is so quick. But I mean, it's like it's a whole book in itself, like as far as lengthwise. But I was all in that point, and I stayed up late, and I didn't care. I wanted to read the rest of the book at that point, but it was a little rough getting to that part. I don't think it was bad. It just wasn't compelling enough to make me face all those pages that were ahead. That I did enjoy the ending, but it needed a reason to keep going. I think that wasn't necessarily provided by the book at the time, but yeah, that's, yeah.
You guys, I'm having a Zoom issue. I'm trying to fix it, and I'm if I lose you, I will post another way to get back in a second. But I don't know what's going on with my Zoom right now. Can you guys hear me?
Suggested rereading Hotel New Hampshire.
Because
that's why you're having an issue. Book. Oh my God.
We should totally do it.